You are listening to the Justin Beahm Radio Hour.
Welcome back to the Radio Hour podcast. I'm your host, Justin Beahm. I really appreciate you tuning in today for this return episode. And my guest is Jess Gowrie, the drummer with Chelsea Wolfe, currently on tour overseas with Chelsea. Jess is a fountain of fascinating stories from the road, from her time working in the manufacturing side of things with rocket shells, and of course her history with Chelsea, who you may recall was a previous guest on the podcast a couple years ago before my long hiatus there. It really was a matter of work just taking over everything, and I'm grateful for that, but it definitely pushed some things to the side, and I'm thrilled to be back on the air with you now. For those who have listened before, the format of the show is basically going to be the same in terms of the new interviews, but I'm also doing something that has been really exciting, and that's in a deep dive into my archives. All these years that I've been writing for Fangoria and Famous Monsters and Scream and Horror Hound and all these other magazines, and in addition to the production stuff I've been doing, I've recorded basically every conversation I've ever had in terms of interviews. So there's a lot of material there that never made it to the page because, of course, we're limited by word count and things like that when you're writing for any kind of outlet like that. And I'm a real side road guy. I love exploring the territory that isn't often illuminated. And unfortunately, a lot of the times that stuff ends up not making print just because it might not be relevant to the topic or film or project at hand. So this is going to offer a chance to hear these interviews completely uncut from front to back, really illuminating discussions with everyone from like Crispin Glover to John Carpenter, a bunch of people from the Halloween universe. Some of you may recall that there was a point years ago where I was working on an official Halloween franchise book, which didn't end up coming to fruition, but I did do a number of interviews for that have never been seen, heard, or read anywhere, basically. So I'm excited to present all that stuff, in addition to really interesting discussions with people from, all walks of entertainment, from Kat Bjelland from Babes in Toyland to Ralph Carmichael, the composer on the original Blob, on to just, it really is an endless stream of conversations that are just sitting there on drives. So the audio quality on some of them might not be the best, but I'm super excited to present them to you because I think that it's important to preserve this stuff. And that's really what I'm all about with my day-to-day work on the production end with Reverend Entertainment through to, of course, all the writing stuff that I do. So every few episodes, instead of a new interview with someone, you're going to get an archive interview that came from some point in my history. And I'll tell the stories behind how the interview came about, what project it was for. And I think that what I've discovered in there is going to be fun for you because there are some things that just didn't make it into articles. Like I would oftentimes, especially with Fango, I would present a core interview, and then I would have sidebar interviews that would be relevant or related, but it was kind of assumed. I knew that it might not make print. It was all based on space. And at that time, I was working with then editor Chris Alexander, who was completely open to all the crazy stuff that I wanted to pitch him, but space was what it was. And so there are some conversations I completely forgot about having. And again, just the opportunity to present the completely unfiltered, total discussion A to Z is going to be fun. The Crispin Glover interviews alone, that was over 2 nights that he and I spoke. It was sort of a career retrospective discussion about his mainstream films and then his personal films that he's been making in the years since. And we really explored so much territory, and he always called me at like 1 or 2 in the morning out of the blue, and that's how they came together. So I'd have to scramble out of bed, turn the recorder on, and try to preserve this thing. And while it did run over 2 issues in Fangoria, and I'm super proud of the piece, there is quite a bit of discussion that didn't make it into print too. So anyway, I'm going to start with Crispin. He'll be the first one. It'll be a couple episodes from now that'll land, and I hope you guys really love that historical stuff as I'm unearthing it here for you. In terms of news with Reverend Entertainment, I mean, as I said earlier, so much has happened since I was last on the air, so I'll just go into some recent announcements here. Shout Factory just announced Death to Smoochie. Well, I guess they're called Shout Studios now, which is hitting the Shout Select line in Blu-ray in August. And Arrow also announced Clash and Wrath of the Titans landing on 4K in August. So those are both on the way soon. A little further down the road is Adam Green and Joel David Moore's Spiral, which lands in October from Ronin Flicks. That was a thrill to be part of. For a movie that's been pretty neglected on video historically, Adam Green and I really worked hand in hand to bring that across the finish line. And I think the documentary that resulted is something worth looking into. Really cool movie that I'm excited to be part of. Shout also announced a Natural Born Killers 4K and Blu-ray Steelbook set that's hitting shelves in July. That's a re-release of the Natural Born Killers set that I did that came out last year, which, I mean, the whole Oliver Stone story has been nuts since I was last doing the podcast here. I've ended up working on, first it was The Hand, which was Oliver's first studio picture. And then I did his documentary JFK Revisited, and then JFK, and then Natural Born Killers. And there's more stuff on the way, I'll just say that, in relation to Oliver. But that relationship has just been the most incredible surprise. And I love working with him, showing up at his house. He and his wife are so sweet and generous. And it's a dream come true. I can't overstate the importance of Oliver's cinema in relation to who I am and what led me to everything that I'm really a part of. It's a revelation that washed over me recently when I was playing drums. I was playing along with When the Music's Over by The Doors, which is one of my favorite songs by them. And for those of you who know that tune, it builds to a real emotional climax. It's a long song, and I'm playing to it, and I just hit that moment, and tears started streaming down my face. And it was coming onto me, this realization that, like, my God, what began years ago with me seeing his film The Doors in theaters, that led to me putting my first band together in junior high, which led to me promoting a band for the first time and sort of hustling tapes and stickers and whatever. It helped open doors to confidence with my poetry at that time too, where I was all of a sudden open to photocopying and selling little chapbooks and stuff like that to kids. It really transformed my perspective on music and on my relationship to music. And then seeing Natural Born Killers in the theater on an ill-fated date in high school that I'll never forget. I mean, that Natural Born Killers blew the doors off my concept of movies, of what was possible. And it showed me that there don't need to be boundaries in the things we create. I was completely enthralled with Natural Born Killers when it came out because it seemed to defy all the basic rules of what I had in my rudimentary young mind assumed about movies and about cinema. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. And then on to all the other great films that he's made, and to have had the opportunity and continue to have the opportunity to work with him on all these really precious films, not just to film fans, but for our culture. He's a guy who challenges the norm. He challenges our perception of historical events. He never takes the easy road. And one thing I'll say about Oliver is that in all these films that I've done, the special features on and stuff, I am struck with how I've never encountered a group of people around a filmmaker before who are so completely dedicated to that person and to their mission and to their vision. The closest would be Don Mancini and the Child's Play universe. I've ended up producing the Blu-rays on all the Child's Play films for Shout Factory, which ended up getting a re-release on an international box set from Arrow too. And that's a similar situation where everybody across the board does nothing but shower Don with absolute love and total devotion. With Oliver, it's like, it's different because people are willing to go through hell for him. I don't think people are necessarily going through hell on Don Mancini's sets, although the Chucky universe has expanded in so many crazy ways that were completely unimaginable historically. But with Oliver, it's from Bob Richardson, who I've now interviewed a number of times, on to the actors, on to the production personnel, location managers. Everybody who walks in the room with him ends up walking out completely on fire about whatever he has pitched them on. And as Bob Richardson told me, I would go through hell for him and with him. And that's been an incredible experience. It's been invigorating creatively, and it's been a tremendous honor just personally, especially considering my history with his movies. So anyway, there's a bunch of Oliver Stone stuff out there. That Natural Born Killers Steelbook, that comes out in July 2nd. Beyond that, now available are Papatopoulos, the Jim Wynorski documentary from my friends over at TerraVision. That just landed, and it has some new interviews that I did with the director, Clay Westervelt. I also did an interview with Jim Wynorski on that picture. So those are both included there, as well as an extended version of that film. Really exciting is a Tank Girl box set from Umbrella. Umbrella has been, if you're not familiar with them, Umbrella has been such an incredible breath of fresh air for me because they go into these box set releases and they throw everything they can into the mix, from booklets to poster reproductions, lobby cards. They always have a great slipcover, reversible cover art, and then also oftentimes they're in a nice box that looks as good on the shelf as it does serve its purpose protecting the discs that are inside of it. And Tank Girl is no exception. So for that, there's a bunch of interviews on there from me. There's the commentary with Rachel and with Lori Petty. And there's also a new interview with Doug Jones, who was one of the Rippers in there, who you may know from The Shape of Water, an infinite list of films inserted here. So that's out there now, and that's from Umbrella Entertainment. Matinee is landing June 25th from Shout Factory on 4K, and I did all the special features on that one. Lots of tremendous stuff there. Orphan was recently released. That's one where they kind of called me in at the 11th hour and we're looking for some additional special features, and I put together some commentary tracks with a bunch of great folks, including the Attack of the Killer podcast crew and the Heather Wixon and Chris Alexander, Ali Chappelle. There's a bunch of great tracks on that, so that's pretty packed as well. Beyond that, Gretel and Hansel just recently came out from Shout Factory on 4K, and that includes new interview and with production designer Jeremy Reed, as well as a new commentary from Oz Perkins, the director. Two things that are intrinsically attached to this incredibly beautiful film and that really speak to the heart of this production. It is one of my favorite movies of the last decade, let alone all time. And it was a real honor to be part of that one. So that's out there now. And it's another one where, similar to Spiral, it's nice to have a release that really gives this movie the kind of respect and treatment that it merits. Historically, Gretel and Hansel was totally underserved on video. So That's an exciting one. Dante's Inferno is another TerrorVision release, and there's a new commentary on there from James Neibauer, who's a friend of mine and one of the greatest film historians I've ever had the luck of working with. Narc just landed on 4K from Arrow Video, and I have a new interview with the director, Joe Carnahan, on that one. And Joe and I really got deep in not just the production of the film, but the philosophies behind filmmaking. And he's very open and sort of exposing himself in that conversation. So that's a great one. Once Upon a Time in the West just landed on 4K in May from Paramount. And on that, there's a new interview with Leonard Maltin. There's a new commentary with the Spaghetti Western podcast team. A really tremendous release that I hope you guys will check out. And then on to, I mentioned JFK. Also, There's Nothing Out There came out last year from Ronin Flicks, in the real ultimate release of that movie. Not only did director Rolf Konevsky and I do a bunch of new stuff, new interviews, new commentaries, but we also went through his personal video archives and pulled out his earliest movies, things that have never been seen before anywhere publicly, and dressed them up, did new transfers on them, and present them in this set that's really like a tribute to Rolf and his cinema. So that's out there now from Ronin Flicks and available. All this stuff and everything else to come and previous releases you can find at reverendentertainment.com or justinbeahm.com. It's all there, including a little subscription pop-up that'll hit you when you land on the site. If you enter your email address in there, it'll shoot you an email every time there's a new post on there, and it's all news about upcoming releases, special features, and things like that. Also on the site, there's a link to our Redbubble store where I have, finally, Reverend Entertainment shirts and stickers and all kinds of other stuff. That's super exciting. And then the new Steve Reberb and the Soundtones Anniversary Remastered CD is available on my site. This is the surf rockabilly band that you may have heard if you listen to some historical episodes of the Radio Hour. I played drums for this group for a number of years and had a hell of a time touring with them and gigging, and we did a couple recordings. This is the only studio album that we had, and I did a remaster on it, and now that's available, and that ships directly from me. So if you order that from my site, I'll send you some swag with it, like stickers and buttons and coasters and stuff like that. So lots of stuff to be found at reverendentertainment.com and justinbeahm.com, and it's the same on social media if you find my name. I would love to hear from you if you'd like to reach out. So, without further ado, let's dive into this conversation with Jess Gowrie. After Jess, there's going to be a portion of the show where I run through some voicemails that have come in. With each episode, you can call into the show and you can leave me a voicemail that I'll play on the air, and you can comment on a previous episode, ask a question of something, whatever it might be. I'm happy to address it on the air. The phone number you can call at any time to leave me a voicemail is 951-357-6955. You can also email me at justinbeamradiohour@gmail.com. Either one of those, you can reach out and I will respond to you on the air here. That's going to be a regular feature on the program. And again, that's going to follow the interview here with Jess on this return episode. So apologies for all of the housekeeping that needed to be done leading up to this. Thank you again for tuning in. Let's get that interview with Jess rolling, and I'll talk to you on the other side. Jess, thank you so much for coming on the show here and having a chat with me today.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
I'd like to know, when did you first become intrigued by the drums? I remember when I was a kid and watching, like my dad had Johnny Carson on all the time and those kinds of shows, getting exposed to tons of different drummers. What was your first exposure to it?
Honestly, it's kind of a weird one, but I remember my grandparents took me to a wedding when I was 7, and I was weirdly obsessed with the drummer. So much so where I was just standing in front of him watching him play, He's probably thinking like, what is this kid doing? But towards the end, he let me come up, play tambourine, and I'm sure it was terrible, but he just, involved me however he could, because he could tell I just like could not stop watching him. And it was kind of, it was interesting to me that I was so like drawn to him out of everyone, in the band. And it just kind of started from there.
I remember my uncle played in polka bands, and he had a drum set in his basement. But seeing him play, that was a real eye-opening experience as a kid, because
Yeah.
music existed outside of the room, really, for so long.
Yeah. I didn't, and that's the thing too, is like no one in my family plays, even like any other instrument really. I have some cousins that sing and stuff like that, but I wasn't exposed to, actual like instruments. And so I think seeing this complete stranger, I was just right place, right time.
Yeah,
And it just kind of opened my world,
that,
you know?
that's amazing. So when did you start
Yeah.
making an effort to get into playing yourself then?
Well, I mean, I obviously did the pots and pans thing when I was little, but I didn't get my first like, real drum set until I was like 8 or 9,
Hmm.
you know? And even then, it didn't have any cymbals or, it was like just kind of half a kit that we found. But then when I was like 14, that's when I got like my first like real, it came from a music store. It wasn't like a hand me down or anything like that. And that's really when it took off. It was a Ludwig black, obviously. And uh, I got it for Christmas, and I was like, oh my God, I can't even believe this. And it just, yeah, changed my life.
Oh, do you remember what that first kind of found kit was?
I don't. I honestly don't. It was white and it was beat up. And like I said, I barely had the right parts. I know I didn't have like a clutch for the hi hat. Like it was just like, the little details were missing. But it didn't stop me at all. I still tried to bang on them, and but I really needed a step up from that at some point.
Yeah.
So
Did you
we got it.
were you in school band at all?
For a little bit I was, but it was still, I was like playing snare drum, like, and I was always like, man, I want the full kit, but I don't think I was in the, it was too early for me. I wasn't in the right grade for full kit, and I was always just like really, pushing for like, this isn't enough. I need the full kit.
Yeah.
Um, but in high school, I was in jazz band for like a split second, but real bands, like that's when I started my first real band, and that took me in the direction I needed to go. It didn't have anything to do with school anymore.
Yeah.
It was real life.
Yeah, my experience was totally the same, where by the time I was a sophomore in high school, I had all my real bands that I was playing in. In school
Yeah.
band, same as you, jazz band for like 1 year. None of it was settling with me. It wasn't resonating
Yeah.
at all.
Mm-mm.
So,
Well, and also like the drummer that was in the band, in the class, he had been in the band for like a few years. I didn't get to play hardly anything.
yep.
I think I played the Beatles song yesterday, and it was just, real basic. And I was just craving for more.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't think this is for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that you got that Ludwig kit, and what was your first band? What was your first band called?
I mean, really, my first band was called Glist, and it was freshman in high school. That's when I first played shows. Our first show was a Christmas tree lot, but um, it was, awesome. And unfortunately I don't see those guys anymore, but they played such an important role in my life. Oddly enough, the singer of that band was that jazz drummer that never let me play in class. So I learned a lot from him, as a drummer, and we were really into the Smashing Pumpkins. So obviously, Jimmy Chamberlain taught me a lot without
Yeah.
realizing he didn't know me at all, but he was teaching me. So
That
yeah,
early band experience is so pivotal, because
yeah,
it's the first time I remember having a family outside of my home family. And
Yeah.
then you're also bonding through the experience of trying to make something happen. And especially when you're that age, you can't really
Hmm.
play anywhere. There are so few venues for kids to
Yeah.
play. Where were you guys finding to play?
I mean, honestly, coffee shops.
Hmm.
There was some record shops that would let us play. But yeah, we would have to either lie about our age or, the thing where you can play, but you have to leave right afterwards
Yeah.
if you're not 21. So, we were in Sacramento, so the rules were a little looser. But yeah, I mean, it was mostly coffee shops, I would say.
Yeah.
And, just made it house shows. Those are always cool.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Yeah.
when you're hauling your gear around, when you first started playing out, many drummers start big and then scale back pretty quickly once they have to
Yeah.
schlep everything around. Did you always stick with the three-piece kit that you play now?
No, I had that other tom, like the two rack
Mm-hmm.
toms. I don't do that anymore, but I'm a small person and I knew better right away. Like, let's keep this, simple,
Yeah.
simple setup. But it made sense for me. I was playing in like rock bands. I didn't need a full spread of things, and
Right.
plus I didn't have access to it anyways. So I just played what I could.
Yeah. So I found it in your history somewhere, a band called The Drama.
The more I need, I become fetus, laughing at execution.
That was right out of high school. I left that high school band to be in the drama. That was certainly when things were becoming like serious, like trying to get label attention and management and, taking it to the next level for sure.
Yeah. Was that ever an uneasy intersection for you? A lot of artists with the sort of business side and the art side, they don't necessarily blend real neatly.
Yeah, I feel like struggle with that still. Like, I'm definitely, a collaborator. I'm, more behind the scenes. I'm more comfortable when we're in the same room, like jamming,
Yeah.
and like even podcasts, like, I told you this, I don't really do stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
like putting yourself out there. So naturally, when you're like, this was back in the day when you would do showcases for labels and they'd come into a room, you'd play two songs and then they'd leave and then the next ones would come in. So that was very uncomfortable because you're like trying to sell yourself or, and mostly getting rejected.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was definitely new for me. But and it's how you did it back then.
Yeah. Right. It makes it a
So
little easier to be the drummer to a certain extent, I guess, because we get to hide behind
yeah,
so much and all that.
I think that is by no mistake. Like, I think that's the kind of like design of a person I am is, to be, kind of just like, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the back, but it's just more of a like not being like flashy or, just holding it together and, you know, appreciating other people and letting other people shine when they need to,
Yeah.
and then shining when I need to as well, but knowing when to hang back and not.
Yeah.
I think that makes a good drummer, personally.
Yeah. Being a foundation and a support
Mm-hmm.
entity to sort of, yeah, carry everything. That's the
Yeah.
same role I play as a producer, too. It's like I'm not an in front of camera person at all. I'm here to, I always
Yeah.
say, kind of like build the stage, put up the podium, hang the lights, turn on the mics, and then
Yeah.
make sure that whoever's up is getting their best presentation they can. You know.
Exactly. No, I totally agree. And when I do get those little moments of being in front, even though it doesn't come super, natural to me, it does show a different side, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So like little segments of that I think are always good for a person to express, you know.
Yeah, and challenge ourselves,
Yeah, exactly.
because comfort zone can turn into routine, and we don't want that with what we
Yeah.
love, right? When did
Yeah.
you first meet Chelsea? Was that in Sacramento as well?
Yeah, it was. We grew up together. I mean, like, I met her when in our early 20s, through a mutual friend, and she has this story she's told before, which I don't remember this happening, but you know, we were hanging out, we weren't playing music together, and she was talking to me, and she's like, "Oh, I need to find a drummer," because she was obviously a singer-songwriter doing Chelsea Wolfe, you know, and I turned to her and I go, "What about me? You know, like there's a drummer right in front of you." And so from then on, from then we joined forces and started playing.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
Red Host was a project you guys had.
Nothing here is deserved, nothing is over enough for you. It's all said and done. Nothing ever had a chance to live. It's a pretty picture you paint. It's a pretty picture.
Was that the sort of genesis of Red Host at that point?
Yeah, basically, like she's always been, you know, Chelsea Wolfe, singer-songwriter. That sounds weird because that's her name, but you know, like she's always had that vision. And then when we met, I was playing shows with her, you know, as Chelsea Wolfe, and then I started writing songs too. And so we thought, well, let's put those, you know, in this category of this like kind of rock band Red Host, all the while she's still doing solo shows and being Chelsea Wolfe. So it kind of split that way when I started contributing, you know, musically.
Well, that's
So,
really, yeah, I love there's a video online of you guys and playing in some club there, and I think it's in Sacramento
oh yeah,
on YouTube. It's just so great, and the energy is so wonderful
yeah.
in the room. So it's
We're
interesting.
babies. Yeah.
Babies, yeah, yeah. What kit were you playing at that point?
I was playing a kit called Rocket Shells, and I actually worked at that place for 20 years, and it's carbon fiber custom drum sets. And so I had to represent, obviously, you know. I worked there from 18 to probably about actually right before the pandemic I left.
Wow.
So that's a long time of working there, but I love them and have always tried to rep them. They're great drums. But yeah, it was Rocket Shells.
Yeah, their technology is
Pretty
really
rad.
interesting. I was looking through
It's amazing.
and I remember,
Yeah.
I think maybe at the Nashville NAMM show some year. I used to work in music retail, and I seem to remember bumping into them at the NAMM show, maybe in Nashville. And it's a fascinating concept. Not everybody thinks of carbon fiber. I think there's still maybe a Head might have had a kit, or Remo at some point that was carbon fiber. I don't know. But can you sell listeners on the technology for Rocket Shells?
Oh, this won't be hard. I'm sure my band is so tired of me talking about, well, they're lighter, louder, and stronger. But yeah, basically, carbon fiber make really awesome drums because with wood, with certain temperatures, wood warps, you know, especially if you're playing like in a basement or you're practicing somewhere where there's moisture or something. Well, carbon fiber isn't affected by that.
Yeah.
Also, they're really light, which like drums are a pain in the ass to carry. So that is very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say they're louder, they project. It's obviously up to how you're playing, the heads you're using, and all that. But they have a range, I think, that a lot of other maybe wood drums don't have. And I don't know, they're just amazing, you know, like working around carbon fiber is definitely not what you want to do for 20 years. But I think besides that, they taught me a lot about tuning and just caring for your kit. And we did NAM a lot, so that doesn't surprise me that you met them there.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're really awesome. I can't play them anymore. We don't make drums anymore. Like they stopped making drums probably 10 years ago.
Wow.
So now if you see a Rocket Shells kit or snare out in the wild, it's special if you can find them.
The site still has lots of great stuff on it where people can dive in and look at the history and the snare concepts with the hybrid shells that were being built, and the tuning system was really unique on some of those snares too. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I love that. There is so much variation with drums as you're traveling and around. When you start to tour, is that something that you've learned to roll with as you move into different climates, into different areas of the world as you're touring, staying on top of keeping things tuned up and everything?
Well, yeah, I mean, I make sure I change my heads a lot when we're on like an extensive tour. But, I'm endorsed by Tama now, which I'm so grateful for. They're such a rad company, and they always make sure that when I'm overseas, like they have a Tama kit that I can play, So I always kind of know what I'm dealing with, and I'm like, Thomas seems to me, all their hardware, they just like are so dialed in and make everything so easy. But as far as like tuning, it's like, sure, I've got to get in there and make sure the heads, I love Remos, and I won't ever play anything else besides, but yeah, Tom has been awesome. And I have a Star Classic, like custom kind of black, it's just, they're rad. I love them.
Are you still playing that Babinga kit? Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Full Babinga. Super cool. Yeah, definitely.
They've come a long way over the years, from back in the day when Lars was one of the few guys.
I know. They've got
major, but yeah, they're huge now.
I know. You go on their website and you see all these just legendary people, that play. And so I'm in good company, I can't deny that at all. Like, it's an honor.
Yeah, rightfully so. Yeah. Before you're playing, before you hit the stage, did you ever develop a warm-up routine, anything that you work through with your hands prior to going out?
Yeah, I have a reflex pad from, reflex, and I don't, it's not too crazy, but you do your single strokes, double strokes, paradiddles, things like that. I've often one of my favorite things is to meet with the drummers of whoever we're touring with, and we kind of trade like warm up exercises. It's bonding exercise for sure, but yeah, especially as I get older, I mean, let's be real, like your body starts getting tired.
Yeah.
So I didn't used to warm up at all, and I would pay for it the next day. So I've learned my lesson.
Yeah, for sure.
You gotta stretch it out, and do what you can.
Yeah.
So
I take even when I'm not playing, I take a little practice pad in my bag everywhere I go, and a pair of sticks, just to keep it. And I find even with the film stuff, when I'm editing, I work out a lot of rhythms with cuts with my practice pad, which is always right to the side. I have a great Vader double-sided 12-inch pad that I just love, and I have. But so it's like, it's just that rhythm and playing is just ingrained in everything. So it's good to keep the hands moving. It's really really good.
It also calms my nerves too.
Yeah.
Like before you're about to go on, I do struggle with being really fucking nervous and stage fright a little, and that really gets me in the zone, and I can just like forget about what's happening,
Yeah.
But then once we get out there, it's fine.
Oh yeah. You plug in, it's like instantaneous. So what were some of the early lessons that you learned when you started touring? What were some of the things you started to pick up while on the road?
That's a good question. I think, first of all, try to get as much sleep as you can. Like, you don't have to be the first to rise. You're not missing out on anything, like, because it's really, obviously really exhausting. Not necessarily the playing the show, but all the other hours of the day that you're, trying to get to the place and carrying, loading in, loading out, that kind of stuff. So just really taking care of yourself, because, it's really easy to get drained and sick and whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then also like keep in touch with people like at home, so you feel, you don't get, lonely or detached with, what's going on there. Just like calling in and,
Yeah.
because you can be gone for a long time.
Yeah.
So just stuff like that. Just trying to keep your mental health like steady.
Yeah, that's a really healthy perspective.
It's important.
Yeah. Staying grounded with the people. I love that. Staying in touch. It can be so easy to lose track of that in the hustle and bustle of everything that's
Yeah.
involved with touring.
Yeah, and everybody's going, 5 different directions, and you're in a place you've never been. And as a woman, I don't always feel comfortable like venturing out by myself. Sometimes I do, but it's good to have like a buddy with you. Like you just never know, where you're at most of the time. So these are just things that keep me like, more in a positive vibe.
Yeah.
So
you had a duo outfit with Zach Brown.
yeah.
I'm Dirty Too. That was a really cool
Wow.
project.
You did some digging.
I did some digging.
Darkness drives me forth tonight. Oh, it's oh so cold. I don't mind, I'll go tonight. Girl, you know I'll go. Every day you pray for it. Pray for what's been shown. Every day those drops of rain sink down into your home.
What an interesting
Yeah.
project for you. I mean, just the two of you. So you're talking about how the nervous you get before playing and all that. Was that moment of you sort of pushing yourself to the front of the stage a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we were singing. I was singing.
Yeah.
Like we would do 50-50, like he would sing his songs, I would sing, but then we'd also sing together. And he would, if he was here, he would admit like him and I aren't the strongest singers by any means. So we thought, well, maybe with our powers combined, and then, turn up the amps a little bit more. I feel like we had great riffs. And if you have a great riff and a good melody, you can achieve some stuff, even if maybe you're not the strongest singer. So I loved that band. It was definitely pushing me out of my comfort zone, both of us. And someday I hope even just like jamming with them again would be awesome.
Yeah.
We had a lot of musical chemistry, especially when we would sit down and write together, and it was really, really fun. But he's in Tycho, and so he, started getting really busy, and then I got into Chelsea, and I don't know, things just kind of, we just kind of pulled apart a little bit, but
Yeah. But
we still talk.
that relationship remains. That's one of the great things about music is that
Oh, yeah.
it's a completely singular relationship universe. And these things endure forever.
Definitely. The best times is sometimes, it doesn't happen often, but there's been a few shows festivals where Tycho and Chelsea have played the same festival. And that is the most amazing thing, to see my very good friend in this, place that,
Aw.
we've sometimes never been to. And we get to see each other like, succeeding in our own paths
Yeah.
and just supporting each other. I I loved it. Like I said, it's happened just a handful of times, but it's been really nice.
Oh, how exciting to pull up. I'm here.
Yeah.
Where are you?
Yeah,
Where are you?
exactly. Let's go watch Bjork play
Yeah.
together now, or like just cool like scenarios that would just never normally happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was cool.
The Happy Fangs was around this time as well. And so what was the transition? Would that have been the transition from the project with Zach into Happy Fangs?
Yeah, I basically moved to New York and I was going to try to get into set design. And I wasn't going to give up music, but I was very discouraged. And so I was like, okay, I need to try something else. And actually, Happy Fangs contacted me and they're from San Francisco. So they were like, we need a drummer. Would you be interested? And I was like, oh, well, I'm on the East Coast now, but I think I want to go back to the West Coast. And that kind of got me, back over there.
Yeah.
And I joined up with them. And that was like an experience I've never had in a band ever. But it was really fun. And I really care about those two a lot,
Yeah.
And they were actually very supportive of, because that was when I was going to join back with Chelsea, actually, that, we started talking. So they were very supportive about like, you should go and experience this with your old friend, Chelsea,
Aw.
So it was cool.
You said that experience was unlike anything you had had before in a band.
Yeah.
What made it unique?
Well, they had this thing where Rebecca, the singer, would ask someone in the crowd about like a topic, and we'd literally make up a song on the spot involving this topic. Now, I am a Capricorn, as I've told you before. I like to be prepared. I like to know what I'm doing. And you just can't do that in that band. But wow, it really like stretched me and pushed me in so many uncomfortable, ways. And I just got so much better as a musician because of them. And now I use it in this where if we're ever having technical difficulties and there's some lull, I make up stuff now. And it's definitely because of Happy Fangs that I learned how to just be like, just go for it, and I'll look at Brian, and it's usually Brian and I, and we just jam. And that 100% came from them, that confidence to do that. And so I'm very grateful for that experience,
There's a real freedom to that, to having no boundaries in a way, almost knocking structure off the table. It's almost like the early days when you first start playing and just experimenting. And what a great way to push yourself and play around and have fun.
Yeah, I mean, it teaches you how to communicate with your band without talking.
Yeah.
You have to know changes, starts and stops, half times, whatever is going to happen, you're doing it all through like just eyes and, movement. And that's a skill that needs to be practiced,
Yeah.
and it's important to have that kind of look where you're like, oh, they're telling me something. I need to figure it out,
We're on alert the whole time in the back. We're watching everybody's hands. We're watching their heads. If there's a little look to the side, you're trying to figure. We're really kind of reading the room from the back of the stage without seeing faces most of the time.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes I'll like need to talk to Ben or something, but we're so far apart and there's fog everywhere, and I'm just like, well, this isn't going to work. So, but yes, for the most part, like clued in on everyone, and just making sure that it's all good.
Yeah.
That's the drummer's job in a sense,
Yeah. Tell me about that New Year's Eve party where you and Chelsea bumped into each other again after, what was it, like 7 years or something? You guys had not really hung
Yeah,
out?
yeah. We didn't talk for 7 years. I don't know. I'm so grateful for it. It was like, well, I was on the road with Happy Fangs, and she contacted me out of the blue and said, I'm going to be in town for New Year's. I'd love to see you. And even just that, like, I was just like, wow, like I really, by then I think I had let go of whatever, our past held, but I hadn't seen her. I hadn't talked to her. So, when I went to the party, and it was such a small party, there was like 5 people, and I only say that because Chelsea and I instantly like sat down on the couch and then talked for hours, like it was a very intimate experience, and it was so needed. Like just all the whatever it was just lifted up, and it was just so nice to see her again and hear about her adventures that she's been on. And she came out to see a couple of Happy Fang shows when we play LA, so it was like we were totally supporting each other in this, and also rediscovering our friendship, which to me is the most important thing, like friendships,
Yeah.
for sure.
What was it like the first time you guys played together again then?
Well, a lot of it was like remotely. Basically, I would record drums and send it to them, but we were thinking about maybe starting like a side project. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So, her, Ben, and I were just, sending files back and forth. And then I don't know exactly when she decided to make like it not a side project anymore, but she basically was like, what would you think about making these songs the next Chelsea record? And that's what His Spun is. And I was just like, that's amazing, like, of course, that's so rad. Being back with her, I feel like her and I have probably, in my opinion, for me, an amazing amount of musical chemistry. Obviously we did Mrs. Piss. Like, there's things that we bring out of each other that I don't think anyone else brings out of me like her.
Yeah.
So it was awesome. Like, I really am lack of words of how that felt, because it just happened so organically, and I was, very surprised by it. But these songs were so rad, like, 16 Psyche and all those songs. Like, I was really happy to be a part of them.
Yeah.
For sure.
You guys had both grown so much by that point.
Yeah.
So you walk in.
It wouldn't have happened if we hadn't,
Yeah.
like, we needed that time apart. She needed to grow, not just as a musician and do the things that she had inside of her, but the band, her brand, like she needed to go in that direction, and I needed to have experiences that I did in order for us to come back together, to blend the two, and it's just really special, for me. Like, I just feel you don't come across relationships like that very often.
Yeah.
So.
And they talk about that party and her calling you out of the blue. It's these fragile little moments that you look back on almost like they're made of glass. And you think about how easily that could have not happened. How easily, if I didn't answer the phone that day or whatever. And they could lead to so many incredible journeys, these little moments.
Yeah, totally. I mean, she's rad, and even, and especially back then, she's, really busy, like touring and doing all that stuff. So I'm so happy that she decided to go to SAC for New Year's, because that kind of kicked everything off, and it was cool. Yeah.
You guys went to God City in Salem to record that album. You had so many gear choices available to you walking in there. Tell me about the experience of recording and how you were digging through their sort of arsenal of drum gear.
Okay, well, we had two kits. We had like the live kit, but then he has like, I mean, like kind of like a dungeon area, and we had a dungeon kit. That one's obviously very like subdued and washy and like kind of, reverbed out. And so oftentimes we would play, the same song on both and combine. Or maybe there was like the bridge was done on the dungeon kit and the rest is up there. Also, he had a ton of snare drums. And I do remember I would hit each snare drum, we would record it, and then I would ask Chelsea, which one do you like? And it was like a blind, she had no idea what was what. And more often than not, I'm very proud of this, the rocket shells would get picked.
Nice.
And I was just like, yes. So not all the time though. There's a song where I play a banjo as a snare drum. So, we experimented with a lot of different percussion elements, and I had never had that experience before. That was my very first time of having all of this equipment at my fingertips, Very cool. And I love the way the drums turned out. There's like just a softness to the edge, and I think that's because of the dungeon kit and the live kit,
Absolutely. Yeah, that album sounds absolutely incredible. How do you think Salem influenced what you guys were doing?
I was just going to say, it was like snowing and cold, and that you can hear that in the album. Like snow, 2 feet high. Like it was just, and being from California, I don't really see a lot of snow. So it's definitely puts you in a slightly uncomfortable, feeling. And I really hear it in the guitars. Obviously, like that's not, I don't know exactly what pedals they use or anything like that, but I can feel the cold, edge in that album. And I feel like that plays a part in it.
And snow quiets everything down too. It's like it mutes the world around you. And I wonder how that influences the creative process. It's almost like you're creating in a soundproof universe completely inside
and we stayed upstairs. There's like an apartment, so we lived in that place the whole time. We just became a part of that. And it was cool.
Wow. Did you guys have some heart-to-heart moments after sessions when you guys were there? I mean, this is the first time you're in the same room again doing it. And
Yeah, for sure. I spent a lot of time with Chelsea at her house constructing these songs. So that's probably when we had like our first heart-to-hearts. By the time we got to the studio, the songs were pretty much, what they were going to be, minus just tones and whatever they decided. But I will say, they're staying up there. We all slept in one room. There were bunk beds. I mean, you have to have heart to hearts, and like there's a sweetness about that. Because that's just kind of a once in a lifetime thing. Like I don't think that will ever happen again in that way. And so when I look back, I really do appreciate like those times.
Especially with the chaos of touring and everything, where you guys are being pulled in so many different directions. The musical relationship has different faces when you're touring,
Yeah.
when you get to be in the studio. And that's like the one time you get to lock the door to the world kind of and just be you guys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
For sure.
You,
It was special. And there were 2 cats. So Chelsea and I each got a cat. So
no.
at the end of the day, we had our own cats. I mean, that's the best
What are their
right there.
names?
Stu and Dio. So Studio. Which I almost forgot what their names are. It's like, how do you forget that? But yeah. Stu and Dio.
So,
Yeah.
so your family grew.
Yeah.
Is this around did the Tama thing happen after you left Rocket Shells when they kind of
Yeah.
changed direction?
Yeah.
Okay. You had played a 20-inch kick initially, right? And then you transitioned to 22. When did that happen?
Yeah. That was after, basically, like, we felt the subs in Chelsea, my kick drum maybe wasn't deep enough or matching that vibe. And this was coming from, like one of our sound guys early on. And I kind of agreed, like, I wanted less of a punch and more of, just like a well-rounded, like, warmer. And so I knew I had to get a bigger kick drum to do that.
Yeah.
But my toms stayed the same, but the kick drum just needed a little bit more oomph to it and less, bright, punchy, or.
Sure. Yeah. 22 is it's like the perfect size because 18 has that higher end frequency and it's definitely brighter. But then the 24 is almost a little unmanageable outside of specific gigs, where it makes sense.
Well, I can't even play on a 24. The toms sit too high,
yeah.
and so I'm like, so 24 is just out of the question, anyways.
Yeah.
22 is basically like just where it's not too big, but I still had to get comfortable with where everything was sitting.
Right.
It is different.
And you were doing 12-inch mounted or however stand tom, rack tom, and you at one point were interested in moving to a 13. Did you ever make that switch to the 13?
No, because I just went with the molds that they already have.
Oh yeah.
Having a 13, they would have to make like a special thing, and maybe someday that would be awesome. But for that, I was just like, okay, I get it. I'll just stick with like your basic measurements,
Yeah. Yeah. And the 16 matches the 22 nicely for a good low end. Yeah, for sure. And then how did the relationship with Istanbul come about for your cymbals?
Actually, it was Dave from Russian Circles. He plays them. And he was like, let me contact them and see if they're interested. And I just recently, talk about small world, I just recently went down to visit their warehouse because they're in LA. And I walk in and they're like, you might know this guy. And it's Johnny. He used to play in a band called Far. He trained me at Rocket Shells.
What?
He was the guy, I kind of replaced him because he was moving to LA when I was 18. So I'm just like, wow, like full circle moment.
Yeah.
But Istanbul's awesome. I can't ask for anything better. They're so kind and giving, and they, they want to make sure that you're stoked. They want to make sure everyone in the band is stoked. I mean, cymbals they affect everybody, You're like,
Yep.
I know. And I'm on a quest to find like the perfect cymbals, especially with Chelsea, but just in general, so it's been a journey, but they're always like, well, why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? I mean, that's an awesome company,
Yeah.
Not many companies would really like work out the issues with you, and take the time.
Right.
So
yeah,
that's cool.
That's the dragon we're chasing with cymbals. I feel like it's really hard to settle. I found that was with Bosphorus years ago. The ride, I finally found the perfect ride, but it was with them. And Istanbul's the same, where you can walk into that warehouse and the variety of tone range is just absolutely incredible. And a lot of cymbal makers claim to have dark cymbals, with a real sort of healthy low end to them, but not all of them do. It's
Mhm.
really the hand-hammered guys who are putting
Mhm.
that kind of stuff out. What was your
Absolutely.
when you went to the warehouse? Were you just lining them up? And I mean, how do you even begin to
No,
dig through that spectrum?
no. I just talked to Scott. Like, I just asked him, look, these are the issues I'm having live in the band. The cymbal I play right now is good for certain things, but not for other things. He's I've been on this journey with him for a while, so he's kind of narrowed it down. And he was like, well, try this. So that was just a very easy, like, I went in there, played on the cymbal. It's hard to tell when you're not in the
Yeah,
band setting.
yeah,
It's like, who knows if this is going to be too washy or not. But it's turned out to be great. And I just really appreciate their patience with me, because cymbals, like you said, are like a beast. It's really hard to find what complements everyone, what isn't, interfering, you know.
yeah. And it may sound great at home, but once you're there, the frequency can be weird. There's so many different elements that can interfere and
Yeah.
conflict with what you're
Well,
doing.
and we're on in-ears now, and that's a whole other world of interference
Yeah,
with what's going on in your brain. It's like all isolated right there now. So it's a challenge, but it's good because it also forces me to experiment with different stuff. And I'm kind of the person that's like, oh, I like this, let's keep
yeah,
it. And it's like, well, no, like, broaden your horizons a little bit.
yeah, yeah.
So it's good for me.
You were touring then in support of His Spun. And what was the road
Hmm.
experience like when you guys were back out together doing this for the first time in so long?
Yeah, we we definitely we definitely partied. um it was really nice though, like, just being free. And it was, everyone is like really excited, when you've got, and plus Brian started at the same time I did, our guitar player, so
Hmm.
it was like a new vibe entirely, not just me. And I think it was just kind of like, it felt like a, breath of fresh air or something. Or, you know,
Yeah.
obviously you'll have to ask them how they felt, but for me, it was all new and exciting and fun. And yeah, I mean, we did party a lot, but I think that's what you're supposed to do early on,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, for sure. Recording Birth of Violence. What was different with this album and how you guys wanted to approach it? I remember this is the one that I had Chelsea on the show when we were at the Stanley
Mm.
Hotel, and we
Yeah.
were talking about the origins and how earth and nature kind of was really strong anchor for this album.
Hmm.
How did you guys approach this one?
Well, this one was different because it's, like an acoustic album. And so what I, believe was happening was Chelsea was starting to write, even during our touring of His Spun, starting to write these, acoustic songs.
Hmm.
And, compiling this other, side of her, which, by the way, has always been there, the rock side and the acoustic side with her. And this is something I've learned when we were in Red Host.
Yeah.
It's not one or the other that is enough. It's kind of like both. It's in and out, or you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like, and so that's always been consistent. And so she wrote a bunch of these songs at home, and they recorded it at her house, and so I just went up and laid some tracks down on the kit.
Mm.
Honestly, kind of made them up. I listened to the song maybe a little bit and then record.
Wow.
I didn't have them ahead of time. I didn't prepare anything, which was the point. I played with brushes. I played with rods, or like, definitely. Once again, Chelsea's taking me down a path that I'm not necessarily not comfortable with, but never have done before. Like, um, experiment with just like different percussions, and I went there, maybe was supposed to play in a couple songs, and then they'd be like, well, maybe we can have drums on this part for this song, and it just kind of grew a little bit, and it was cool because I hear some of the stuff I was doing on it, and I'm like, oh, that's so cool, like this like kind of weird brush patterns
Yeah.
I didn't know was inside,
Oh.
like she brought it out.
That's
So
well, and the happy fangs a little bit too coming into this, where you're just walking in fresh and
yeah.
off the cuff with the recording, and
Mm-hmm.
and weather had a lot to do with that album too for you guys, right? She talked a lot about the storms that were passing through much of the
Yeah.
recording.
Yeah, she lives in a spot where, I've been snowed in to her house, and which I'm not complaining
Yeah.
about. Like, that's cool, So, yeah, I mean, I think that more so for her when, writing the songs. I'm, I know that she's always very affected by what's happening around her, and
Mhm.
weather, or what's going on in her life, or anything,
Yeah.
so that makes sense to me as far as just the actual like writing part, but for me, I definitely was just trying to complement it, not uh play too much or too loud, or I just wanted to just be there to support it, and help however I could.
Yeah. There was a break after that album. This is when Mrs. Piss came about. So this sounds like it's you guys going back to the early days in a way. How did this project grow and end up
Yeah.
you guys release an album as well?
Well, the break you talk about is the pandemic. Basically, before that, though, Chelsea and I had been working on Piss songs for about 3 years. It was usually around my birthday. She would come in, and all I would want to do is go into the studio for my birthday and record some stuff with her.
Cool.
Like, and we purposely wanted these songs to be short and sweet and just stuff, once again, that we've never done before. I mean, the vocals on that album are, I don't think anyone has ever really heard Chelsea sound like that.
Mm-mm.
And I was just so happy with how far she wanted to bend and try weird shit. And same with me, like, playing guitar and writing these like really fast, like sometimes punk, sometimes grungy. It was She really like kind of pulled me out of the drum world, and we created space for me to show other parts of myself, and same with her. And so Piss is very, very special to me.
Yeah.
Like, that is basically it, that sums my musical soul up, is Mrs. Piss,
Amazing. Is there more to come?
Yeah, there's going to be more. We just like are so busy with Chelsea,
Yeah.
like releasing this new album. The album took a little longer to record. I mean, things just take longer, and now we're touring on it. So there's definitely going to be more. There just needs to be time to make that happen. But I have, riffs, and she's got riffs, and so it's there. We just have to like construct it.
Oh, so great. That was talk about a breath of fresh air when that landed. Just knocked me off my feet.
Yeah.
What a great fucking album.
I know. I'm so proud of it. I really am.
Yeah. And when did you move to LA then?
I've only been here a few months.
Yeah.
And most of it, we've been on tour.
Oh, yeah.
So I can't really say I've been here all that long, actually.
Yeah.
But so far, it's cool, I'm just kind of scratching the surface. So I don't really know much about it, but, it's fun here.
With She Reaches Out, you said the writing took a little bit longer. The recording process on that took a little bit longer. How did you guys have to approach this one, and what were you trying to do differently this time around?
Well, we started working on those, the demos, during the pandemic. So naturally that was a couple of years of having these, not really finished songs, but kind of starts of ideas. And then we went into, Dave Sidek's studio and kind of just said, for the first time, I feel like we kind of gave a lot of control to him and was like, where do you see these going? What do you see happening? Having him, produce it. A lot of times these songs were pretty much already produced and done. So this was a new adventure for all of us.
Yeah.
And he instantly gave me this pulsar, which is a drum kind of machine thing. I'm sure people are going to be like, it's not that, but that's how I describe it. And he said, learn this. And so I was like, wow, okay. Talk about, once again, out of my element. I'm seeing a pattern here.
Yeah.
Okay. So the world is trying to tell me you need to try new stuff. But yeah, that was scary and also really rad because I, in some ways fell in love with the pulsar, and now I want to use it for piss stuff and, whatever. But it doesn't just stop there. I was playing a paintbrush on a spring. It was just honestly, we did have times where I played the kit, but not as much as you think. But a lot of people think stuff is programmed, and it wasn't. It was electronic elements, but they were being played by, us. And because it sounds obviously like an electronic record, and there are elements, but it's a lot more organic than you think it is,
How has your preparation,
which I think is rad.
How has your preparation for the tour been then, considering the electronic elements that you're going to be building in?
Totally, Well, I play on an SPD now, so the pad, and I have triggers. And even though we are blending old and new songs, so not everything has triggers, but the new songs, obviously, I do, they have the triggers, and it's been a mind-bending, awesome experience, even figuring out the SPD, and, we're just why isn't this working? Or, just trial and error.
Yeah.
But we finally, obviously before we left for tour, but we finally got it. Triggers are working. Everything's sounding great. So it was like a work in progress, but I think it totally adds to the live show. It sounds like the record 100%.
Cool.
But it also, we have a little bit more, well, you know, we're live, so there's a little bit more punch to it,
Yeah.
but the sounds are taken from the record, you know?
Yeah.
So
Have you
it's pretty cool.
Are you putting stuff under older songs then too? Have you guys added layers of anything with the electronics?
Yeah, I do think, yeah, and Ben does a lot of, he's, you know,
Yeah.
does the tracks and stuff, so I definitely know that he's updated some things and added some, you know, and worked on different kinds of, just to make it cohesive with everything else. I mean, which I feel like you've got to do if you're, you know, playing, like, we pretty much play the entire new record, and we have these other half of the set is the new songs. There can't be such a stark difference.
Yeah.
Like, we have to figure out a way to meld the two.
Yeah.
And he's really good at that, you know.
What can people, I mean, by the time this comes out, I think you're going to be gone already because you're leaving in just a few days as we're recording here, and then you're going to be on tour for a while. What can fans expect visually with the presentation on this tour?
Oh, man. You mean like the lights and
Yeah, the projection and all
show?
those kinds of things. It seems to have
Oh,
really
John
evolved
Michael?
over the last couple of years.
Well, it's because that's John Michael. I mean, look, every time someone compliments the show, it's like, your lights are amazing. Which I'm so happy about because he is such a sweet guy and he's very, very talented. And honestly, I don't even know half the stuff he does. First of all, I'm not able to see it. I'm looking this way.
Yeah.
But also, he just has a mind for it that is just so different. And that's what people are seeing. Like, he's approaching it in a way that, honestly, I'm not seen done before, you know? But he also knows when to just, like, let us groove.
Mm-hmm.
But he also knows when to set a scene and just, like, take over. And people are just, like, in awe. And it's really fun to watch. It's great to see the videos on Instagram, you know, because then I'm like, oh, this is what you're doing. That's so cool, you know? But yeah, John Michael's rad. Honestly, like, this is, I feel like, the best live show we've done. Like, everything is stepped up sonically and visually. Totally.
I'm so excited to see it.
Yeah, are you going to see it?
Yeah, at some point. I haven't figured out when yet because my schedule's crazy. And
well, I hope you do.
Yeah, for sure.
But every album she's done before me, after me, every album is so different.
Mm-hmm.
But has the same of her, you know, that little vein of her. And it's her, you know, the melodies, I feel like, are what people, like, go, that's Chelsea, you know?
Yeah.
It can be acoustic, it could be electronic, it could be rock, but yeah, it's always been there. So it hasn't changed that much, you know, like, but now she's able to do it and express it on a different level.
Sure.
So,
and people, you talk about that reaction of the audience. I've seen people cry when she comes out on stage. What are some of the ways you've seen people respond to her and what you guys are doing?
I mean, absolutely. A lot of times, well, on this set, when she's been doing the encores, so we'll leave the stage so I can really watch the crowd at that point. You know, I'm looking straight at them off to the side of the stage because I like to watch. I still love watching her play, like, you know, and you really do see people just, like, you know, crying and just standing there, or kind of just, you can see it in their eyes, you know, and it's amazing to me to have that, you know, people appreciate what you're doing so much that that's their reaction, you know. And Chelsea's really good at getting emotion out of you through her music. And, you know, we're talking old songs like Flatlands and stuff like that, like she's done that for years, you know, even songs before Red Host. Like there's just something about what she can do that, you know, and I'm just happy to be able, I think we all are just happy to be able to support that, you know, and do what we can to add even a little bit more of whatever it is, you know. So it's I'm grateful to be in this band and get these opportunities for sure.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. Thank you to Jess for being a part of this episode. Truly a great conversation and an honor to continue the thread around Chelsea Wolfe, who's one of my all-time favorite artists, and her creative co-pilots being on the show here. So Jess, thank you, and I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let's dive in on the voicemails here. We'll start with the first one.
Hey, Justin, it's Bill Van Vagel, co-host of Land of the Creeps and contributor to the new horror movie podcast. I'm so glad that you've got your show back going. Everyone's going to be enthralled with your breakdowns of movies, insights into the music and movie industry, and your overall knowledge of movies that you're going to share with us. I'm sure you're going to get some really good guests, and I'm sure you're going to have some developments of what's going on with your productions and just some fun reviews, that sort of thing. Everybody's going to love it. Me, myself, I'm always available to be a guest, have a microphone, we'll travel. But you know what? If I come on, let's just talk hockey. To heck with movies. Let's make it a sports day. Anyway, good luck with everything, Justin. You know, I'm just a phone call away or a message away. So everybody, listen to Justin. He's the man. He knows what he's doing. And check out Land of the Creeps if you haven't. Anyways, good luck. Have fun. And bring the movie scares on. Let's go.
Bill Van Vagel, oh my gosh, from Land of the Creeps. I've been on Land of the Creeps a number of times over the years. I mean, really, I think it was some of the earliest interviews I did back in my Fango days were on that show. I'm really close friends with Greg and Pearl and Dave and Bill over there. Just a tremendous crew of people. And Bill, thank you for the comments. Bill and I really do. Most of our messaging is about hockey. We're both Montreal Canadiens fans. And so they're always a team with plenty of discussion around them. And I just love diving in with him. Bill, thank you so much for calling in, man.
All right. Justin Beahm, baby. Can't wait to hear your first episode. Of course, you know, I'm a regular caller over at the Land of the Creeps, which is where this sent me the direction to your little podcast. I always appreciate all the snippets that I've heard, all the episodes that you've been, on for LOTC. I haven't gone all the way back to the early days of it, but, you know, as of the last 6-7 years, definitely have enjoyed every opportunity that you've put on that show. And I'm eager to listen to your own podcast. I've never dabbled in any of your previous escapades. I do have several of your, special featured movies that you've created, and you're a master of the craft, and I can't wait to see what's in the future. And obviously, we're, I think all your fans are eager to see where you're gonna go. I don't know. I am known for the occasional song on Land of the Creeps, so I'll throw it out there if you have any recommendations that you'd like to hear Greg from Ohio sing. Otherwise, I may. You never know what you might hear from me. I'll keep a lookout for that first episode, and, we'll talk at you later.
Greg from Ohio, oh my God. Yeah, a regular call-in to Land of the Creeps. It's so great to hear your voice, and I hope you enjoy the shows. I hope dive in on those previous episodes, and for better or for worse. And thank you for the support, man, of all of the projects and things that I have going. I really appreciate it. And again, I really hope you enjoy the program here. Thanks again for calling in.
Hi, Justin. This is Joel Saints. First of all, welcome back. It is great to hear the radio hour come back. I have two questions for you, if you don't mind me asking and answering. One, how much do you think a Dark Shadows video game would help draw in new fans to the franchise? And number two, do you think Mark B. Perry will eventually get Dark Shadows picked up on a network? Because he is currently shopping it around. Thank you for taking my question, and God bless.
Hi, Joel. Great questions. I think that Dark Shadows is one of those evergreen titles. That show it's timeless, and I think that its run and its video distribution has been kind of limited in the last few years here. I remember when it was playing regularly on syndication, but I think it would do a lot of good for that shingle, I guess, for lack of a better term, for a video game to come around. And there's so much ground to explore with that. That show introduced so many characters. I have to give a shout out to my webmaster and a good buddy, Lynn Amaker, who's a huge Dark Shadows fan and watched through the entire series front to back over the course of a few years. And throughout that time, I would pop in now and again to watch an episode along with him at the same time, remotely. And it was always so much fun. And it also wild how much things would change and shift, new characters coming and going. And so, yeah, I think a video game would be a tremendous way to bring that to a current generation. It's endlessly fruitful in my mind. So I did enjoy, and I did coverage on the Tim Burton Dark Shadows film, and I know that may be sacrilegious to a lot of hardcore Dark Shadows fans, but I really enjoyed what Tim did with that, and the conversation that I had with him, that was for Famous Monsters, I think, was really insightful about his perspective on how he was viewing his chance to play in that sandbox. So I hope to dig up that interview as part of this archive treasure hunt that I'm on. I want to find that one and include it on a future episode, and I hope you enjoy that. As far as a reboot with Mark B. Perry, I mean, geez, bring it on. I'm a huge Wonder Years fan, and I don't think he could do anything wrong with it. I think that while there have been failed attempts to bring it back in the past, now would be a great time for that, because I think that the market is open to all kinds of genre television, and I think that the capabilities of the effects, and especially, I mean, geez, the cast that they could put together on that could be outstanding. So I'm not privy to anyone that Mark has been considering for casting or anything like that, and certainly have no inside information, but I think that would be a home run. So I'm in. Thanks for calling into the show.
It's time for the Justin Beahm Radio Hour, brought to you by your friends at Easy Go Laxatives. When you gotta go, why not make it an easy go? And now, without further ado, here's the host with the most, the gold standard from coast to coast, Justin Beahm.
This is my good buddy Josh Luce, who, oh my gosh, Josh and I go way back too. Back when I was working in music retail, Josh ended up as a guitar salesman in my combo department, we referred to it as, selling drums and guitars and stuff like that. Well, Josh was on the guitar side of things, and we became fast friends. And in fact, I continue to play with Josh remotely. He has a surf band called Josh Luce and the Plan 9, and I've been recording drum tracks for him for his live performances, where he plays along with a backing track and does a lot of really fun songs from Link Ray on to The Ventures and beyond. So Josh, thank you for the little bumper there. That's great. I'll definitely have to make use of that. And as always, it's great to hear your voice, man. So great. Thank you for calling in.
Hey, buddy, this is your old buddy Rod. Love seeing all this awesome work you're doing. We've come a long ways from those sweet Guns N' Roses hats. Keep rocking, buddy.
Okay, this is another one that has a little bit of a story. That was Rod Rasmussen, who was a good friend of mine when I was a kid, when I was in like junior high. Rod and I used to hang out and watch movies and stuff, and we would go to the summer carnival that came to town every year here in Marion, Iowa, where I grew up. And it was called Fun Days. And back then, all these different like carny vendors were giving out prizes that were ultimately sort of disguised drug paraphernalia, if you remember that, like these mirrors with White Snake on them and stuff like that. And Rod and I ended up winning Guns N' Roses hats. They were like white cowboy hats that had a sort of sash around it that said Guns N' Roses on them. And we thought they were just the most ridiculous fucking thing. And we wore them proudly, probably for about 2 hours afterwards. So Rod, man, so great to hear your voice. Total blast from the past. And I'm just thrilled to hear your voice. So thank you for calling in, man.
Yes, Justin, this is Samuel Carmack, and I just wanted to say congratulations on the show coming back, and I can't wait to hear the episodes. I'm sure they'll be awesome. Thank you.
Oh, Samuel, you've always been such a great supporter, man, and a good friend, and thank you so much for calling in and being part of this return to the airwaves. Geez, talk about history. It's really, there's so many people that I've bumped into over the years as a result of the work that I do. And you don't even think about how long-standing a lot of those connections are. And Samuel, yours is definitely one of the longest term and most treasured. So, God, thank you so much. I really appreciate it and appreciate you calling in. Good to hear your voice.
Hey, Justin, this is Barry Lemon. I'm a long-time caller, first-time listener, but I do have a question. What inspired you to pursue filmmaking, and how did you get into the film industry? Like, how did you get started? Not only that, but what influences or filmmakers inspired your work the most? I'm looking forward to your response.
Hi, Barry. Thank you for calling into the show. Great. I don't know what that impression was or what that was, but in terms of what got me into film, I was always renting as much as I could as a kid and going to the movies as much as I could as a kid. And of course, reading as much as I could find. And I've talked before about my friend Matt passing me copies of Fango at school and stuff like that because he had a subscription to it. So Fangoria was always kind of the benchmark. That was the gold standard for me, and that was definitely the aim when it came to writing at some point, but it was something that felt so removed and so unobtainable for so long. And then it was kind of an accident that this whole thing happened. I ended up being an extra in a film called Collapse, directed by Jason Bollinger and Mike Saunders, that shot here in Iowa, and it had Linnea Quigley, and I mean, it's just a fun alternate zombie film, I guess you could say. It's got a nice twist to it. Anyway, they were filming that, and I just on a whim answered a classified ad looking for extras to be a zombie in the film. And I showed up and had an amazing time, and then became fast friends with Mike and Jason, which opened the door to Linnea. That opened the door to me writing for Fangoria, because the connection to Linnea bred a super ridiculously exhaustive Night of the Demons retrospective that hasn't yet even hit print because it was so bloated. I mean, I probably interviewed like 25 people for that one article, and it was way too long for Fangoria at the time. But that's what got the ball rolling. That's really that's what I sent to Chris Alexander when I proposed writing for the magazine to him. I sent him a copy of that piece and then a list of other articles that I was interested in writing, and we were off to the races from there. Well, fast forward a couple years, and I was doing an article on the Halloween 4 through 6 story arc for Fango. And I interviewed Malik Akkad, who's the head of Trancas International Films and Compass, and son of Mustafa Akkad. And Malik and I really hit it off. And very long story short, I ended up working for Trancas, and then he and I co-founded a nonprofit together and stuff. And as a result of the Trancas work that I was doing, I ended up producing the Blu-rays, the first Blu-ray releases of Halloween 4 and 5, where I did commentary with Dwight Little on 4 and Don Shanks, Michael Myers, on 5. And that was really the first home video kind of thing that I did. And that opened the door to everything from that point. I mean, that next thing that I did, I think, was probably Prince of Darkness for Shout Factory in conjunction with Michael Felsher, where I interviewed Alice Cooper and John Carpenter. And then I did The Town That Dreaded Sundown for Shout. And then it was just totally off to the races from there. And it's been nonstop since then, really. It's been an incredible journey that I continue to pinch myself about every day. I remain in disbelief that this is the work that I get the opportunity to do. So that's what led to it. But prior to that is just me being a nerd about movies, me loving especially monster movies and horror and creatures and all the Universal classics and things like that when I was a kid. My brother Mitch and I renting Sleepaway Camp over and over and over, in addition to so many other great movies like Revenge of the Nerds, I'm Gonna Get You Sucka, and Child's Play, and these other things. I mean, it's just, it all dovetails into what led me to this dance. And like I said, I just remain dumbfounded that this is something I have the opportunity to do, and I'm humbled every day. It's amazing. It really is. Thank you for calling in.
Hey, Justin, Brian Gotzel here. And first off, I want to thank you for being a social media guru. I love social media, not social media, physical media. God, it's been a long day. Physical media. You could be a social media guru too, but physical media. I love physical media. I know you do too, and I love the work you're doing to keep it alive. Now, I got a question, and then I'll give you my answer. What is the best movie for a drive-in experience? What would be the movie, if you could pick one, you'd watch at the drive-in? I know my answer, and I was lucky enough to watch it with you and a bunch of friends, and that's The Legend of Boggy Creek. Beautiful, under the stars in the middle of Iowa in a cornfield. Love that movie to this day. Another question, what's the number one, or your number one, movie snack? Mine's popcorn. I love popcorn. I could eat a whole thing of popcorn. Take all the corn out of the fields, bring it in, pop it for me. I'd eat it all. What's your number one? Can't wait to listen to the show for years and years, and take care. Bye-bye.
Oh, Brian, thank you so much for calling in. Brian Godsell he's probably the greatest ambassador for just passionate film love that I've met in recent years. He's an incredible, boundless, energetic supporter of everything from local cinemas on to, he puts on his own screening events now. And he and his wife, it's so inspiring to be around them because they have all of the enthusiasm that we all can relate to. And Brian, in answer to your questions, that Boggy Creek experience was incredible. In the interim here, since I had my show on the air last, I had a screening series at a drive-in here in Iowa that I would do in the fall. So the way that it would work is at the end of their season, basically when the weather was bad enough that they didn't want to bank on showing films anymore, I had for 2 years a screening night where I would do a double bill. And the second year of that, I ended up showing Legend of Boggy Creek and Michael Dougherty's Trick or Treat, which was a tremendous double bill. And I would have vendors there and costume contest and things like that. For this one, I ended up getting this ghillie suit and a Bigfoot mask, and I would run around in between the cars while the movie was playing, while Legend of Boggy Creek was playing, and scare people at their windows and crawl up behind people and stuff. It was a total blast, and Brian was a big part of that because he volunteered for that, which was no surprise. He and his son are just amazing about this stuff, and I think Legend of Boggy Creek is probably the ultimate drive-in movie. The other that I would say, and not the greatest movie, but written by Buck Flower, and certainly one that's directly tied into that universe, is going to be Drive-In Massacre. If you haven't seen Drive-In Massacre, it's great because not only is the story like this wacky slasher thing, but also it shows all sides of a drive-in. You're in the concession booth. You're in the empty lot when there's no cars there. You're in the booth when all the people are streaming through and trying to sneak in the trunks of cars and things. It's so much fun, and I'm a huge Buck Flower fan, so anything associated with Buck, I'm going to be on board with, and that's one that he actually wrote. So I would say the combination, and what I should have probably done that year, even though Trick or Treat was an honor to show at a drive-in for the first time, I think it may have been Drive-In Massacre and Legend of Boggy Creek. Speaking of Legend of Boggy Creek, real briefly, I ended up also recently working on the 4K restoration of that film with Charles B. Pierce, who's the director. It's his daughter, Pamela Pierce. And we not only got the film completely remastered and stabilized and cleaned up and everything like that, but also we found a bunch of outtakes that no one knew existed. So if you buy the Blu-ray from Pam, and I think it's legendofboggycreek.com, I have a special feature on there that shows some of those. And that includes extended shots of the monster, which you don't see a whole lot in the movie, as well as footage of Pierce directing. There's a bunch of great stuff on there, and it's worth it just for the film alone. I mean, the remaster is something that we worked for several years on and turned out just incredible. There's also a commentary track from cryptozoology maestro, Lyle Blackburn, on that. So lots of reasons to show up, and I hope you check that one out. Brian, in terms of my favorite movie-going snack, I'm with you. It's popcorn. For me, every time I go to the movies, there's two things that I'm armed with when I sit down. It's going to be popcorn, and it's going to be a slushie. That's how it rolls with me. Popcorn and slushies. So kindred spirits once again, Brian. Thank you so much for calling in. On to the last voicemail.
Guess who's back? Back again. JB's back. Tell a friend. What's up, Justin Beahm and the Radio Hours? Greg Mortis from Land of the Creeks. Justin, man, you're such a good friend, and I'm super excited you're back on the airways. Cannot wait to be watching and listening with you. I'm so super proud of you, brother. I will be your number one fan, as in misery, that is. I will be your number one fan. I love you, Justin Beahm. You know that, brother, and I will always support you through everything. And as I always like to say, our one song, JB, that's ours is On the Warm Side of the Door, my friend. We'll always be able to share that. I love you. Pearl and I are rooting for you, hoping you for all success, dude. You knocking this out of the park. I'll be right there every episode, brother. Love you. Appreciate you. Everyone, love this man. Respect this man. Be this man. Love you, JB. Greg Mortis signing out.
Greg Mortis, oh my God. Greg from Land of the Creeps. Like I said earlier, just so many years under the belt with these guys, and especially with Greg. I mean, what began as getting to know each other through his show and being on there and stuff really grew into one of the closest friendships I have. And Greg, you are treasured and loved as well. And I send all my love to you and Pearl, and I'm an eternal fan of LOTC. Thank you so much for calling in and being part of this episode. It's the perfect cap to all these voicemails. Thank you, man. God, I mean, thank you. And that about wraps it up for this return episode of the Radio Hour podcast. Again, you can find me online at justinbeam.com or reverendentertainment.com. on social media. Just look me up, hit me up. I would love to hear from you. And I'm excited for these episodes to drop over the next few weeks here. And again, that archive project that's happening, I hope you guys really enjoy that. Again, that phone number, if you want to call into the show, you've heard these voicemails here, is 951-357-6955, and Justin Beahm Radio Hour at gmail.com is the email address. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you guys in a week.